Thank you, Keogan. I'm glad everyone has the right time for the debate. It takes me a couple of days after the clocks go back to adjust. I'm glad we're still limiting our clock change to twice a year. The government seems satisfied with merely changing the sunsets on their legislation. Good afternoon to you, Minister. It is great pleasure that I inform you that I am one of your reckless elected members who will be voting against this motion. It really was a show in the lower house yesterday. I'll touch on that in a moment, but the Minister's speech gives too great an opportunity for scrutiny. Your quote, Minister: "We are in a place where we have been concerned about the burden and the impact of this level of disease is having on our health services." We're coming up to 2 years of COVID. That's 2 years to plan, 2 years to mobilise, 2 years to put all the stops and beef up our healthcare system to the point that is necessary to deal with this problem. I spoke last month of how Sweden doubled its ICU capacity to tackle the pandemic, with the number of ICU beds in its capital quadrupling. Drastic action was taken, not in the form of foisting responsibility for disease control onto the population by enforcing lockdowns, but by rising to the challenge and protecting the people. In our health system, if our health system is now burdened, it's not the fault of people or persons who choose not to get vaccinated, or of children who want to go to school or play basketball. Responsibility begins and ends with you and your remit as Minister. You said that these laws were, quote, "not for prolonging a moment longer than is necessary," and yet we're prolonging them for literally as long as is possible under the Parent Act, the full 3-month period. Your quote, Minister: "The intention is to only use the provisions within these acts for the measures that are currently in place." Quick, start the clock, because the last time you came into this House and used that line in relation to the use of COVID certs, it was less than 2 weeks before the Cabinet changed their minds. I'll be keeping an eye on the news on the 17th of November. Your quote, Minister: "Our strategy to manage the adverse impact of COVID has been guided by an evolving understanding of the disease." What nonsense. Our understanding of the vaccines has evolved. Their real-world efficacy is falling far below test results, but the government can't acknowledge that, aside from boosters for the elderly, because this government has never had a single plan other than lockdown and wait for the vaccine. Now, at 93% vaccination rate, we're no better off, and the government is, let's be honest, entertaining the idea of another lockdown, although you'll wait until your media scare people for a few more weeks until you're open about it. Your quote, Minister: "Government must act with caution to ensure the most vulnerable continue to be protected." Who are you talking about? That was the line that was being used when the narrative was, we just need the over 80s, the over 60s, the over 70s vax, and then we'll go back to normal. What's the narrative now? Where are the goalposts? They've been moved so many times I've lost track. Or maybe the government has quietly packed the goalposts back into the container and we're just supposedly to keep playing for the heck of it. Now, as for yesterday's fiasco, fully vaccinated individuals with breakthrough infections have peak viral load similar to unvaccinated cases and can efficiently transmit infection in household settings, including to fully vaccinated contacts. That's a direct quote from the community transmission and viral load kinetics of the Delta variant in vaccinated and unvaccinated individuals in the UK, a prospective longitudinal cohort study which was published last month in the Lancet Medical Journal of Infectious Diseases. Inconvenient science is still science, Minister. And should we just follow the state-sanctioned science? It was this finding that Deputy Verona Murphy was getting at yesterday. Minister, a finding published in one of the world's oldest and best-known medical journals, which you labelled anti-vaccine information. But of course, that's been one of the most useful social tools in controlling the debate around COVID. Simply slap the label of anti-vax on an opponent and suddenly you don't have to take any of the questions or critique seriously. It is beyond ridiculous that for months now in both houses, any members wanting to ask a bona fide questions around vaccines has been forced to qualify it with "I'm not of anti-vax, but..." It's a cheap trick to insulate those in power from criticism, and it makes for sorry behaviour from a cabinet minister. You could slap any label on me that you want. I don't give two hoots on how you or anyone else will try to limit and police my speech. I know who I am and I know what I'm about, and that's standing up for the people of this country and for their civil liberties, for their freedom of speech, and to hold this government to account for its stubbornly stagnated, faltering COVID response, which has simultaneously failed to suppress the virus while adopting the most overreaching and constrictive lockdown measures in Europe. Minister, I have never supported the two-tier society that the vaccine passport has created. I would suggest, Minister, you look at the scientific data on the efficacy of these experimental vaccines and start looking for a refund.